Hello and welcome to today's video. Now you probably see me sat here in a car holding an envelope and you're thinking, oh, is he going to start going on to the whole sort of popularist politics approach and start talking about figures such as Nigel Farage or whatever he's called, or Donald Trump and other things like that? God no. No, what I'm doing is just introducing the video. I'm not one of those YouTubers. I couldn't be even if I tried. I don't have the skin for it. It was the thick skin. What I am doing though is an expectations versus reality when it comes to a car brochure. So we are sat in here. We are sat in my N16 Almera, and we're going to take a look at the brochure, and we're going to have a look at the car itself and see what it looks like 22 years after the brochure was published, given that the car itself is 22 years old. Let's get started. Here's the brochure, and what I'm going to be doing is comparing certain things in the car to another vehicle from this era which I know quite well, that being the Vauxhall Astra G, or Opel Astra G. So the Astra, which came between 1998 and 2004. Now the Almera was from 2000 to 2006, and until the N17 Pulsar. I can be corrected on that. I'll probably put a link, a thing underneath the text to say if it is N17, but that seems to make sense to me, because the Tedia was a C11. I can't remember off the top of my head. Anyway, but the Almera N16 Almera was actually Nissan's last conventional sort of Focus-sized hatchback until the Pulsar, which came in about 2013-2014 and went out of production, or went off sale in the UK in 2020. Now, the Almera was known as other things on other markets. The Sentra, the Bluebird Sylphy, the Pulsar, funnily enough. And they had a different range of engines, trims, etc. Now, we only got, engine-wise, the 1.5 petrol, the 1.8 petrol, and a 2.2 litre diesel in varying states of tune. We didn't get the 2 litre SR20 petrol, from what I remember. So we were already limited in the range of engines that we had, whereas the Astra was available from, certainly in petrol, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8, 2 litre turbo, and 2.2. Although I think the 2 litre was only a 2 litre turbo. And there was also, I think, 1.7 and 2 litre diesels as well, if I remember rightly. Like the Zafira B, like the Astra G, there was also the Almera Tino, which was not a 7-seater, but it was in the sort of people carrier vein. That was all the rage back then. But anyway, this particular brochure is specifically for the Almera Twister, of which this particular car is an Almera Twister. So let's have a look. So first off, let's have a look at the colours. This particular car is in Techno Grey, but you can also get Tornado Grey, which is kind of like a bluey grey, Imperial Blue, Century Green, and Arctic White. Let's have a look at some of the features. It says here that we have disc front and discs rear. Well, actually on this particular car it has drums at the rear, so this is quite possibly an earlier Twister example, although it was registered in February 2002. This particular brochure dates from December 2001, so somebody buying this particular car in February 2002 may have been given this brochure, but may actually have an older car. So we do get the chrome door handles. We did have these wheel trims, although they, on this particular car, were smashed to pieces and quite fragile. The CD player that we have actually differs. because it looks like this, which I think is an earlier CD player. We do have air conditioning, but the air conditioning on this was not working by 2005, so that didn't seem to last very long. The seats are this reverberate trim, but if you notice on this particular version, in this model, it's a different style. So you've still got the reverberate pattern, but unlike this one, where the bolsters are covered in the material, this one has this sort of arrangement. And I think, talking to a friend of mine who used to work on the Nissan production line actually making these seats, this is due to a difference in the method of the actual manufacture of the seat. So these would use some kind of adhesive which would secure the fabric onto the foam itself. These ones use a conventional metal framework with what they call hog ties to secure the fabric onto the foam base. And this particular car has done 76,000 miles. We have extensive wear here and here. And this is actually a replacement cover because the one that was on here previously had completely torn away, and also the foam under here had shifted off of the metal frame and gone back, and I've just bolstered it out with some extra foam. So certainly Nissan were going through a bit of a crisis with cost cutting at the time, and this seems to be one of the areas where they let themselves down a bit, and that was certainly on the seats. I mean, they look lovely and inviting here, and in use they're okay, but for longevity, not so. I'd say that the Astra G fared a lot better with longevity when it came to the interior. The other thing, which is very sort of telling of the cost cutting, is this dash. It's hard plastic. It's not particularly squidgy plastic, which is very thin, so it's not horrible and scratchy to the touch. But whereas I think the certainly on the Bertone convertible, they used soft touch foam backed plastic vinyl covering, this just has hard plastic, and you can see here over the years the cover for that has started to warp slightly under the heat and is starting to lift. But then again, that's only really sort of noticeable now after 22 years. The other problem is this sort of lower down plastic is quite susceptible to scratches, as you can see on here. So I think the point I'm getting at is it could look quite tatty sort of quite soon, early on in its life, and invariably it did. I mean, it hasn't really got any worse than this, but little sort of marks like this have been around for years, and these were sort of quite easy to mark. You do get, though, inside and outside chrome door handles, which do look quite nice. Electric front windows, although the auto is down only, whereas on the comparable Astra it is not only down auto, it's also up auto, and it's one touch on all windows, whereas this one is just driver's side window. Storage and oddments wise, this is actually quite well provided for, so that was certainly one thing they did get certainly did get right. I mean, we have quite a nice storage compartment here for sort of cards and things like that. You've also got quite a deep storage receptacle in the centre, with various things in there. You have a little section here that you can put pens in, and what I quite like about this is not only does it have a proper cigar lighter, which you just don't see anymore, which is obviously a 12 volt outlet as well, but You could use it, if you're still a smoker in this day and age, you could use it to light your desired choice of smoke. We have this little compartment here which doubles as an ashtray, but it's also a little receptacle for storage and coin storage. And I've just realised that's not even the ashtray, but anyway, that's like a little storage area there for coins and other items that you may want to store. The ashtray is actually here. That can either be used as an ashtray or for something else. Obviously removable, so that's quite nice. There is a cup holder of sorts here, which will hold bottles, but it's more suited for cans really, because a bottle is too tall and they do have this tendency to tip over. In here is a nice rubberized or rubber anti-slip mat. On certain models this is actually used as a CD changer compartment, so a separate CD changer separate to a cassette head unit would be placed into here. However, on this model you've got quite a useful space. There's also this storage space up here, which is very useful, quite a good deep size storage. Nothing comparable on the Astra, so really I'm sort of now looking at features which set the Almera apart. There are photos around on the internet where this actually has a satellite navigation unit inserted into it, so you've actually got like a binnacle there and no top storage. Facelift S versions have this but without the lid. Facelift SE versions have this but with a screen for climate control, and even higher up versions have the reverse camera and satellite navigation as standard, which you again didn't see on the Astra G. That was an optional extra on those for sure. Glove compartment is actually very spacious. There's more than enough space for obviously the car handbooks, in this case for some reason some lawnmower spark plugs, and anything else that you may want to store. However, it isn't lockable, but not really an issue if you take anything secure out of there. Door bins, very good size at the front. However, at the back, that's your door bin at the back, so you're not really sort of well provided for in the rear for storage. However, you do have these rather useful seat pockets on the back of each seat. You also have your own 12-volt outlet and an ashtray cum storage / rubbish bin here, which is actually quite a good deep size, and again removable for easy emptying, so rear passengers are quite well catered for. Well, I said they weren't catered for very well earlier, but it's not too bad, but they're not as well catered for as the front passengers. Something else you have, which you can't see with the door closed, actually you can, is on each side this weird little receptacle on the side of the door, possibly for catching coins that may fall out of your pocket, but also can be used for storage. But you can see there the trim actually coming away, and that's something that happened sort of quite early on in this car's life. The big feature that I think only UK models had was, or European models, was this curry hook thing. So you could hang a takeaway on there, or any other bag that you wanted to keep upright. You could just hook onto there and it would keep anything upright. So particularly useful for takeaways and other items that you don't want spilling around. So other things which are not quite so good, the quality of the carpet leaves a fair amount to be desired. I mean, you can actually see that it's, I don't know if it's shrinking or expanding, but it's quite sort of baggy in areas and almost feels a little too thin at certain points. These rear seats, they're okay. They're a 60-40 split, but the covering on the back of here is quite fragile. and susceptible to tearing. Thankfully mine hasn't, because whenever I use the car for tip runs I always cover the whole boot area with extra cloths and coverage, but it's just something to be aware of. It is very thin. Certainly good things, this head lining hasn't sagged at all, so it's also sort of quite a nice, fairly soft covering. However, as you can sort of tell, it is quite thin. There's not really much sound insulation there. There is a rather useful sunglasses holder, which is padded as well, which is quite nice. The Astra G, I think, has those, but on a separate grab handle on the driver's side. They actually have a grab handle that is a sunglasses holder on certain versions. This is unusual. Certainly on a sort of a more base model car like this, you actually have a vanity mirror on the driver's side, as well as obviously on the passenger side, although the passenger side one isn't covered like the driver's side. Neither are illuminated. One thing that's missing that the Astra G has across the range is an outside temperature sensor. That would be on the SE version of this and above. However, the connector is still provided, so I'm going to get hold of one and see if that actually produces the display. Likewise, the manual mirrors, there is the wiring there, both in the door and on the switch, for electric mirrors, if you so wanted to upgrade at all. So let's get on to the mechanical side of things. Now, suspension-wise, on this particular vehicle, there is, for some reason, no front anti-roll bar, which is sort of a little bit cost-cutting in itself. However, the rear axle has a central link, which is almost like a panhard rod, except it's not a panhard rod. It's more of a sort of a central link. And the Astra G did not have any kind of Watts linkage or panhard rod. It just had a bog standard rear twist beam. So certainly the Almera, for driving, it feels a little more secure on the road than the Astra. But to be honest, unless you're sort of really going some, there isn't really sort of much to compare between the two from a driving perspective. I'd say the Almera has the edge for sort of driving pleasure, but it's a close run thing. They're both not anywhere near Focus levels of driving pleasure, but they're really not bad. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this little run through of the brochure versus reality, and you'll probably sort of notice that the reality isn't terrible. Certainly after 22 years, it's really not that bad. Anyway, thank you very much for watching.